It's time for the show that brings the magic right to your speakers. Ears up!
What's going on, everybody? EarzUp podcast. We are back with a lot of stuff going on, man. We have, if we didn't have a full show tonight, we do now. Just as of yesterday, or maybe it's the day before. I can't remember. Time is meaningless in the Disney news sphere. But the Disney company released a lot of information this last week about what's happening across its plethora of arms of business. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, after our main segment. It depends on how long that goes, but definitely going to be running through a lot of it in the secret show tonight. If you are listening live, it is a secret show. The link is already in Patreon, so that's cool for everybody involved. I don't have to do it here, at the break or whatever. Yeah, tons of stuff happening, and I think most of it is, well, not most of it. Some of it I think is cool and funny. Some of it sucks. And,
okay.
The rest is just sort of blah. Like, I don't really care about most of it. But
we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be good, man. I'm excited. I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for today's show, which is an Erik show.
Yay.
Erik, what's up,
Finally.
man? Look at you.
Yeah.
New kid finally decided to start doing his job.
Right. What the hell? Come on.
Yeah. Erik, you did sit in for Terrence. You took over for Terrence.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also taking over the Walt's 9 Old Men segments that Terrence started, headmanned. It was his idea.
I don't have
headmanned
good
it.
ideas, so.
Right. Might as well just take his.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he never completed his job.
He never
so
did. He
somebody
walked
has
out.
to complete it.
That's right. He walked out effective immediately.
Yeah.
So Erik is kicking that off with number 4. Who is Walt's 4th 9 Old Man?
Well,
And it doesn't go in any specific order. Like no
I
one.
was going to say.
Okay. Yeah. I don't want anybody to harass Erik. Poor Erik. Be like, this guy wasn't actually there. Okay, I know it's the order that we're
John
doing it.
Lounsbury.
Yeah. Who is he?
We're talking about Milt Kahl tonight.
Milt Kahl. The call is coming from inside the Milt.
You don't get a lot of Milt.
Milton.
Yeah.
You don't get
No.
a lot of Miltons. Milton
Yeah, you
Berle, Milton Bradley.
Bradley.
Kahl.
Burl. That's it.
Yeah.
Kahl.
That was it. The only ones.
Milton from Office Space.
True. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I saw a
There's a
tweet.
lot of Miltons.
I should have pulled it up. It was like this person was doing some sort of doctoral dissertation on 17th century Amish or something like that. I don't know.
Oh.
And they just were through the whole research phase, they were tracking names. And they're like, okay, now that I'm done and graded, I'm going to turn here are all the weirdest names in the 16th and 17th century Amish community. Maybe we'll go through that in Secret Show.
Ooh.
We'll pick our new Amish name.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
By the way, I'm just sitting here casually with my knee up on the desk, just
Yeah,
chilling.
you're
Yeah,
just
I'm
feeling
just
cash
posing.
tonight. It's Friday.
Yeah,
why not?
I'm like Aristotle. I just have a robe and I'm just leaning against a bush of oregano, saying weird, cool, prophetic stuff, and people are like, "Ugh."
Like
who
the
is this
most
lunatic?
Greek you've ever been.
It's true.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Good point.
All right.
We're not
I feel-
looking up your skirt. It's fine.
Yeah. It's a tunic. I feel weird about it. I don't know. I feel weird that I'm so casual because the camera's on, but I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. Maybe I'm too old to, care.
Or maybe you just gained confidence and you don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. I gained something, whether it's, years or wisdom.
The real
Okay.
test is what happens when you go to the gym and you take a shower. Do you just walk around naked for a little while afterward and talk to other men, other old adult men?
I try to give them pointers actually on how to wash,
Oh,
but
okay.
they don't seem to. I got too many fights. I got kicked out of all the gyms in the area, so now I just work out at home. Yeah, but I go, bro, you missed a spot. Come here, let me help you.
There you
It
go.
doesn't work out well. But that's fine. Whatever. They're going to be dirty in certain spots, and I'm okay with that. I've let that go.
Okay.
Can we
Wisdom.
let it go now?
Yeah, sure we can. Absolutely sure we can. Okay, before we start the show, I do have a couple of announcements. Number one, You go to patreon.com/earsup and support our show for as little as $2 a month. You can get, you basically just get these shows and some other special content like the after hours from Puny Pod, which RGH just finally sent to me. But, he's busy or something. I don't know. And so I'll post that on Patreon this weekend. I mean, honestly, probably Monday or Tuesday. So that'll be up there. But for $5 a month, you get the secret show. It's a whole bunch of other stuff you get as well. I think Supreme Resort guys send me stuff, but I haven't gotten that either. So
yeah, I've got two that I haven't finished editing. The usual.
The usual. It's fine, man. Our Patreon people are cool. They understand. They're going to get the content eventually. There is a new option somehow. This other show I follow said that you can sign up now for a year.
Oh.
Become a year member and you get like a little discount. I don't know if anybody would be interested in that.
That's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me know if that's something that people would be, because usually I don't like paying up front for like a term of thing.
Yeah.
But
see, and I do. If I can afford it, I do, because it's you're always going to save money. And so like it's an upfront cost, but then you don't have to think about it again for a year. And I kind of like that mentality.
The way I go, it's like, if I'm going to save $50 in a year, I'm never going to know it either way. You know what I mean? Unless you're taking that money and going, okay, here's this $50. It's going to go towards this or whatever. I don't know. It's all just doesn't matter to me. I'd rather just have access to the money in case something happens. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. Let me know. Let me know if you want to do that. But also something else in related to our official travel partner, Concierge. I think it's time to announce finally that Taryn and I, along with Alice, unfortunately, are headed back to Disneyland.
Be still my heart.
I know.
Yeah.
I finally twisted his arm.
Eric is clenching his pearls as we speak. Yeah, we're going to go back after Taryn's birthday for a late birthday present. So it'll be in January sometime. But we've finally figured out that, okay, we should probably go back to the park. I don't really want to for myriad reasons, but I'm going to do it anyways. Taryn desperately wants to go. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I contacted Jimmy over at Concierge to make him do more work for me. But this is work that he actually gets paid because he also works for Concierge. So
very true.
Yeah. So I don't feel bad now. So I said, Jimmy, I demand you to do more work for me. And he saluted me and said, yes, sir.
Well, and
Jimmy.
I personally think we've picked like the best date that we could have possibly chosen.
Yeah, tell us your theory about that.
Because so the Disney Run is coming back to Disneyland.
Excuse me, it's called Run Disney.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Run Disney is coming back for the weekend of my birthday. So January 12th through 14th. 12th, 13th, and 14th. And so if we go on the 15th, or actually we'd probably travel on the 15th, go on the 16th, who's going to be there? Who's going to be there? Who's going to the parks on a Tuesday after Run Disney? Everybody's going to Run Disney. And so I think we're going to have a good...
I guess. I mean, I think I like your logic. I think, post COVID or, now, during COVID, I don't think those logic attacks work so well. Cause I don't know. I feel like it's so hard to gauge. Who knows what's going to happen? I feel like the parks are just always busy.
But this is the first Run Disney at Disneyland in
So you're thinking everybody's going to
years.
Save up the time to go there instead of the weekend. Okay, I see what you're saying. Instead of the casuals.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Well, I like it. I think that's cool. Yeah. So anyway, so I contacted Jimmy and I was like, look, here's what we're looking at. I don't have solid dates yet, but we'll get some prices or whatever. And he said, that's fine. The pricing for January doesn't open up until like late May of this year. Okay. So we don't really know how much it's gonna, cost or whatever. But he's like, "Do you want park?" It was interesting, and Concierge, being our travel partner aside, it was kind of interesting being on the other side of not the other side, but being just like asked information and then not worrying about it. You know, where he's like, "Okay, well, how many days are you gonna go?" I said, I don't know, probably 3. He's like, "Do you want a park hop?" Yeah, we do. I think we want a park hop.
Oh yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, you have to wait. You pay 200. I was like, good, because we haven't saved up anything for it yet. So it's perfect. And he's like, well, the good news is you just pay $200 and then you don't have to pay till December. I'm like, oh, that's cool. You can kind of just like wait for it a little bit. And so we're gonna figure that out as soon as he gets back with pricing. The one thing I did, and I know I've been talking about never going back to the parks, and I still feel that way for a little bit, but I've talked a lot about COVID and COVID protocol. So we will be those people wearing masks. That's just what we're gonna do, and I don't care about it. But the other thing is, I wanted a hotel room that we can not have to share ventilated air, because if you're wearing a mask in the park, and then you go back to like the Disneyland hotel and you're sharing air with everybody, what's the point? You know what I mean? So I told Jimmy that. I was like, this is what I'm looking for, is a hotel. So I gave him an extra task, not just find me a cheap hotel and here's the area, but like a detailed, hey, this is an important factor, and I want you to do some legwork for me, the customer. And it was kind of cool. He's like, yeah, maybe like a Residence Inn kind of thing. I said, yeah, something like that. He goes, okay, cool, I'll check it out. So that's just kind of the level of stuff that you can do with concierge, and like that.
Yeah.
So he'll get back to me. I don't know what that's going to entail, but that is definitely, definitely us. So if you're going to be in the parks in January, come say hi. We'll be around.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't navigated yet. I haven't chosen how to navigate eating and drinking yet. I'm still there. This is going to be a long road for your boy, but I'm going to try.
Well, you have several months to figure this out.
I know. Yeah. I know, but it's just, I don't know. It's just a thing.
Yeah, it's something in your head, and that's fine. And I think what will help is that that part doesn't concern me as much. So I feel like I will, and I mean, kind of like with the whole Disneyland thing, I'll just have to twist your arm and be like, are you going to eat?
And I'll say, no, I'm not hungry.
Okay.
RGH is in the chat, and he says, you'll be far from alone in masks. I would say more than 10% of guests were in masks this week. He's in the park right now.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I appreciate that.
A whole 10%.
Yeah, more than 10%.
That's like me at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except it's 1%.
You're the 10%er. So anyway, there you go. I'll keep you guys posted. I think it'll be fun to sort of talk about planning and how we're going to navigate the parks. I'm going to do a little video. I think I say that now, but I probably won't, but I'm going to try. It's like what it's like to come back to the parks. We haven't been since pre-COVID. I don't know how much is different, but I think mentally for me, it's going to be very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Fun. Be fun stuff.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I know I'm going to cry as soon as I walk in.
Of course you are. You're probably crying thinking about it right now.
Not right now.
Excuse me, I gotta go in the bathroom.
I did cry thinking about it one time. Talking to my therapist. like, I think I'm too emotionally invested in a place.
Yeah, probably. That's what I've been trying to tell you.
But whatever.
Yeah, but somehow it doesn't resonate unless you pay me $150.
She just told me it's a place that I feel safe, and I was like, "You're right. I do."
Well, you got a podcast about it, so I mean,
well,
there's a financial aspect as well.
I mean, if you want to feel safe, like we could get an extra large dog crate, and you can just be locked in the dog crate.
Emotionally safe.
Oh, I don't know what that means.
It's a place where I don't have other responsibilities that I usually have in my life, and it feels real good.
Psych. Psych. You got to take care of me. All right, Erik, let's get started with Milt.
Oh,
what do you think, huh?
Diving right in.
Yeah. What are you diving right in? Milt. I've been BSing for 14 minutes.
What are you talking about? Like, wait, what were we talking about?
It's called the intro to the show. And we've done that, and now it's time.
Save me.
Yeah. Now it's time for you, my friend. I wish we had music.
We should think of music, and the next time I do one of these, I'll have some more imagery. I did. I mean, most of the stuff I had was still images, but a lot of the characters you'll hear about in this segment are going to be characters you'll know and characters you love. And if you don't know and love them, then get a subscription to Disney Plus and help out my my shareholder value a little bit. Okay.
Let's do it.
Just a bit. All right. Well, in the realm of Disney animation, there are quite a few names that stand out, and Terrence started this series out a while back about Walt's 9 old men. Some of the folks that stuck around during the most sort of renowned times at the beginning of the studio. They weren't necessarily the first animators there, but they weathered the storms of World War II. They weathered the Depression. They really built the studio into what it became during its golden age. And one of these names is Milt Kahl. He's one of Walt Disney's 9 old men, and his contributions to Disney animation, because of his attention to detail, because of his attention to movement and realism, he helped to define the Disney style for decades. And he left a giant mark on this industry for many years afterward. Milt was considered to be one of the most professional and also one of the most influential and fiery members of the studio.
Okay.
This is why I've never heard his name before.
Yeah. You want to talk about Walt being the firebrand around the studio? Walt called him the genius. He was known to stick his head into Milt's office and say, "Where's my genius?"
Oh. God.
Wow.
It's part of me thinks that's not 100% genuine. I don't know.
No, and it apparently was genuine, because I'll get into it a little bit later.
Right.
Milt was one of the few people that would stand up to Walt, even when Milt was young.
There you go.
When he first started out in the studio, he was also known as the Michelangelo of Disney animation and the King of Kings.
Wow.
There's this.
Louise.
Every day was a coronation ceremony for the man.
Oh yeah.
How have we never heard of this guy if he's put on this huge pedestal?
Right, exactly.
He's too high up. Can't see.
I guess, yeah.
There you go. But I'll tell you about him. And, just to put it into context a little bit, one of his treasured possessions was a caricature he drew of Mark Davis standing over his shoulder and criticizing him. Like in the picture, Milt's like over his drawing board. He's got a bunch of expletive marks, the exclamation and skull and crossbones and stuff. And Mark Davis is saying, well, if you really were God, you would get it right on the first try.
Dang.
So everybody knew his reputation as a firebrand and as a true artist, someone who had very high standards and was also extremely skilled. But let's go all the way back to when Milt was born on March 22nd, 1909 in San Francisco.
Oh, local.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He
Wow,
loved
San
to draw.
Francisco was like a mess back then too, because that was right.
It was like 3 years after the big old earthquake.
It was not rebuilt yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
Crazy.
He wasn't a wealthy kid. His family wasn't wealthy. His dad held many jobs. And really, Milt just grew up loving to draw. He drew motorcycles and things that he liked. And as he put it in one interview, I tore the paper up a lot.
All right.
But when he was a teenager, his father abandoned his family.
Oh.
And Milt, as one of the older kids in his family, dropped out of high school to get a job and support the family. So he went to work for the Oakland Post-Inquirer. Is that still around?
The Inquirer. No, it's the Examiner.
Some rendition of it, I think, is. I don't know if that's exactly what it's called.
The Oakland Post-Inquirer. No, it's not.
Okay. Well, they were around then. And he soon became an art professional. He drew, he animated as part of his work. Once art became his job, he lost interest in it as a hobby.
Of course.
That is exactly what happened to me. As soon as I started doing design for work, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really like this that much.
Right.
After I spent years loving it.
Exactly. But he had the skills from doodling as a kid, and he learned more skill as he went. So while he was working for the paper, he met Ham Lusk.
Ham?
His name was Hamilton, but of course, as things go, you just call him Ham.
Right.
Ham and Wilt.
Got it. Ham and Milt.
Milt.
There you go.
Sorry, wrong word.
There you go. But Ham was another animator who would become one of the 4 young men of Disney animation, which is totally a different series we'll have to do when we're done with the 9 old men.
Right.
they were some of the original Disney artists that actually stuck around after after Universal bought a whole bunch of Walt's animators away from him. But he met Ham, formed a friendship. They bounced around between different animation and art jobs for a while. And during the Depression, Ham had landed at Disney Animation and gave Milt a call. So on June 25th, 1934, he became a Disney animator. He first started out as an in-betweener on Mickey's Fire Brigade, the short that aired in 1935. Do we need to go back to what an in-betweener is? I can't remember how much Terrence...
Yeah, can you remind me?
Oh my God, who doesn't know that?
Of course, yeah, duh.
Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people don't understand the way animation worked back then. You had the main animators, and they would design the characters, they would direct the gags in the short, the storyline of the short, and they would do the major sequences, and they would draw 10 images and say, okay, these are the beats we need to get to. And to improve production, this was one of these innovations that Walt put out there, was to have other people draw the frames in between. So you had your major artists framing the entire thing and drawing these segments in time, and everybody else would fill it in so that it would look smooth.
Okay.
So at least you had these frames that were major, and then the in-betweeners did all of the motion that went on. So in some ways they were copying what you did, but so they had to have some skill in drawing so they could at least keep up the same design and not make it look like a child drew things in between really nice stuff.
Yeah.
But they
sure.
also had to translate that motion as they went so that you would get the sense of realism, the sense of movement in between the major components of the shot. So he started out as an in-betweener, and the following year they recognized his talent and they moved him up to a full animating job on Mickey's Circus. He did a bunch of shorts early on, like The Silly Symphonies, Ferdinand the Bull, The Ugly Duckling, and he stepped up to a junior animator status on Snow White in 1937. His main job there was animating the forest animals, so he wasn't doing the human characters. We had some of the other Golden Age artists working during that on those, but he really made a name for himself drawing realistic animals that moved around and showed.
Yeah, the movement on those animals were awesome. It was very fluid.
Right.
And it even stood out, even to me. Doesn't know anything. You can just tell.
Mm-hmm.
That was something special, yeah.
Yeah, and this was the style that Walt wanted to do. This was the beginning of this was literally the first animated film, feature-length animated movie where he wanted to make jaws drop. He wanted people to see something that really you could only do in real film, but do fantastic things that you can't do with a real camera, because this is animation. You could do whatever you want. So to do this, they brought in a lot of real animals into the studio, and they continued this when they did Bambi several years later. And this is where he really stepped up. Milt came in and watched these animals in the studio, and he learned how they moved in realistic ways. And through that study, he could just create characters out of his head. There was a very popular technique at the time where they would film characters. They would film people moving around and dancing. They would film animals walking around. And a lot of the artists would lean into that practice and use those stills to draw and to make animation. So they'd kind of not really trace over it, but in a way use those exact movements. They'd take specific frames and transfer them into art and into animation. Art Babbitt was one of the animators that really leaned into this process and used them in a lot of the Goofy cartoons to say, okay, well, I can see from making a guy walk like Goofy, I can translate that into animation. He leaned heavily into this. And Milt never really liked this process. He thought it was a crutch. He said in interviews that too many people turned off their brains and relied on the movement that they saw instead of learning how things actually move.
Wow.
And later on in his career, he made a big deal out of it. He discarded live reference. He didn't want to see those videos anymore.
It sounds like Jeremy.
It does?
Sounds like something Jeremy would do.
Oh. How?
I don't know. Just
Okay.
like, I don't like the way they're doing it. I'm never watching
Yeah.
one of these again.
Oh, you're doing it that way, huh? All right.
There you go. But yeah, and we'll talk about Art Babbitt eventually. He wasn't one of Walt's 9 old men, and that's largely because he led the strike against Walt Disney Studios.
That's right. Yeah.
But we'll talk more about that technique in later things. But yeah, because of this mentality, other artists in the studio thought that Milt was a true artist. They loved his style. They loved the way he went about things, and they were in awe that he could just come up with these things off the top of his head. They said that other people said in interviews that when he was working, he could spend an hour staring into the distance, doing nothing. He would create nothing, and then suddenly burn through like 20 drawings in rapid succession. Nothing would ever end up in his trash can. Nothing was discarded. He would just visualize a scene and then draw it and write little notes in the margins about where things could go. And some drawings would have more detail, and some of them would just be quick sketches to kind of fill in the gaps. And that was his process, was to envision movement and then make it happen.
Wild.
That's incredible. That's like those people who can just listen to a song and go, "Oh yeah," and let's just rip it out.
Yeah,
Like,
it's amazing.
I saw a thing. It was a little video clip of Jimi Hendrix playing I think it was Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh.
3 days after it was released.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, I think there's like a live recording of Hendrix playing Sgt. Pepper, and I think that's the video from it. And it's 3 days. That kid learned just listened to it a couple times, probably. I don't know. I mean, 5, 10, who knows what? Ripped it out.
Wow.
That's that kind of talent. That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, and he considered art to be part talent and part work. He considered this, this was his job. And that's, just putting in this effort really was important to him. So one of his big breaks was animating Pinocchio. The initial designs of Pinocchio were very literally wooden. They kept designing this puppet character based on the book that was apparently popular at the time. I guess the original book was popular at various points in time.
All right.
And everybody knew the story. And the way Walt looked at it, he said after looking at a lot of the initial designs, he's like, the character of Pinocchio is a jerk in the books. And the way they animated this character in the early tests, he said, yeah, he's unlikable. His character is unlikable. His design is unlikable. People aren't going to no one wants to engage with this. So he scrapped the entire project, months of work, and made the animators start over again.
God.
Which is crazy. That's a huge amount of money. This is still in Disney's golden age where everything takes years to produce and millions of dollars to make. And Milt, who had already gained a reputation as a brash and outspoken critic of other artists in the studio.
Oh, good. He's one of those guys that's too talented to fire.
Yeah.
But, and also too talented to get away with stuff.
Right.
Yeah, man, that's
right. Yeah, so they redesigned the character, tried to make him look more likable, and he said, all of this is crap.
Oh, boy.
And guess who the director of the film was? One of the two art directors of the film was his old pal Ham, who said, you draw it.
Oh.
Wow.
So still a junior animator, Milt steps up and created a likable character that was basically the cute Pinocchio that we see. And then after creating the character and designing this sort of movement that he could do, his facial movement, his arm movement, then he went back and added in joints and nails and screws. He went back and added in the wooden boy characteristics after the fact and essentially said, here, I've designed the character for you.
Wow.
And then
that's wild, man.
Yeah, and then they could create a lifelike character that was likable without worrying about, oh, how would two, wooden joints move against each other. It's like, it's a cartoon, make it fun,
Right.
add in the bits later, and it worked.
That's a smart way to go about it.
Yeah. And that because of these things, because of his work with Bambi and the animals, because of his work with Pinocchio and creating a character that has endured for decades, Milt became the go-to in the studio for lifelike design. And this isn't one of those stories where it's like Walt Disney had a darker side where he yelled at people. We already know that Milt yelled at people.
Yeah.
Milt was always a fiery guy who would shout his opinions. He'd tell people what he thought. Floyd Norman, you've talked about Floyd Norman in the past. Love his story, but he wrote in an article on Jim Hill Media that on his first day in feature film animation, he was assigned to Stan Green, who was Milt's key assistant. And he was getting his work assignments. He was in betweening. He was doing, whatever they needed him to do. And he first shows up to the office. He meets Stan, and he sees the door on the other side of the office that leads into Milt's personal office.
Okay.
This is one of the legends of animation. Floyd knows who he is. The office is quiet, and he hears, as he's getting his assignments for the day, Milt yell, "Damn it, doesn't anybody know how to draw?"
That's funny.
And he realized he had his work cut out for him.
That's not a good it's not a good message, I suppose. Your first day at work, here you go, you're ready, you're pumped.
No,
right.
It's not going to be as easy as you thought. It's going to be tough in weirder ways.
Yeah, it sets the tone, the cultural tone.
Exactly. But Floyd had learned over time. He said in one of the tributes to Milt after he had passed that there was a presentation at the Walt Disney Family Museum a century after Milt. So the day that Milt would have turned 100. So he was passed at the time, but they had a ceremony for him. They had some tributes to him around the museum, and Floyd Norman was one of the people that spoke there, and he said that he really befriended Milt over time. He worked hard for him. He produced good work and generally didn't get completely chewed out in front of everybody.
Generally.
Yeah.
It had to happen, of course. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think everybody who really got to know Milt said that he wasn't that bad, but Floyd befriended him by drawing little cartoons that would make Milt laugh. So he knew how to calm him down. He knew how to make him laugh, and he would just write gags about other people in the studio, other things that they were doing, and it would make Milt laugh. So he knew he was always on his good side.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, Milt continued his tirades for years, criticizing others, but really with the intent of pushing for better work from everybody that worked under him and worked on his features. Some of the things that he would say, one person asked him once, "How would you draw Pinocchio from the top down?" His response was, "You would never draw him that way. He looks like hell." Because the way that you would do, these days you would draw if you're doing a character study, you often create a 3D maquette so that animators can study them from all angles. He didn't like that. He also didn't like the way they would draw the same character from 6 different perspectives, like one sheet 2D drawings. And he would say that ultimately, when you tried to do these things, sure, there were interesting studies in the character, but there were certain things that you just couldn't do when it came down to animating, when you came down to creating realistic looking movements. Sometimes you had to stretch them in ways that were unnatural to make them look realistic. You can't have things completely wooden, and because people perceive things, people perceive movement and emotions in very specific ways. And he had this innate sense from his work that he knew how to make these emotions come across. And nobody else really got that. People would say that he drew his drawings of like Jiminy Cricket putting on a coat was like he was animating a dancer. Like
Wow.
he just had that sense. He hated doing the hero characters. He was assigned to the prince in Sleeping Beauty. He said the hero doesn't show relation, despair, anger, or anything. The hardest thing to do in animation is nothing.
All right.
And think of these characters, like the princes, they're just boring, handsome guys.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I bet if you just looked at the face, not the outfit that they're wearing, whatever, you probably couldn't tell the difference between him or me. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Between the princes, like what movie goes to what prince,
Oh,
right?
yes. Oh,
yeah.
those ones, yes.
Yeah, because they're there for like half a second.
Well,
no one cares.
because Prince Charming from Cinderella and Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty, totally interchangeable.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh. And then there's me.
There
Prince
you go.
Me from my own personal hell.
And then there's you.
Yeah.
He animated Alice, a lot of scenes of Alice. He never finished most of the scenes. He would just start them and somebody else would finish them. He didn't like animating her because he didn't like her story. He liked the Lewis Carroll book.
Yeah, her story's dumb, dude.
But ultimately, he's like, her only motivation is I want to get home. And he didn't like that.
Yeah, she's one of those I've never arced in my life characters. She doesn't change. She's no different. She's just the same person.
She went through a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
it's an interesting movie. There are a lot of colors.
Sure.
And on that note, he really loved working with Mark Davis and Mary Blair.
Who?
Some other people.
Okay.
He really appreciated their approach, their style, how Mark would put humor into things, and how he would add interesting emotions, and he could convey a scene in very few images. That really translated into a lot of what Davis did in the parks. Mary Blair and her command of color, he loved it. On the flip side, Avon Earl, the designer of a lot of Sleeping Beauty, a lot of the backgrounds, a lot of the color, a lot of the thematic designs, he couldn't stand his designs, but he loved his use of color. So he could respect certain things about people, but hate the way that they translated into film. He said it wasn't interesting for film because it was so unrealistic, and these shapes didn't exist. Trees didn't look that way. They weren't square. And
have them go to Disneyland Paris. You can just make them that way.
Right. Obviously,
you can just trim them that way.
But yeah, he didn't like. He was obviously very vocal about certain things, but he could see the merit in a lot. In particular about Sleeping Beauty, he pointed out that he liked the Earl designs, but he ultimately thought that Sleeping Beauty would have been a better film if Walt had cared about it. Because the movie came out like it was being produced in the years that Walt was working on Disneyland, he knew that Walt wasn't paying attention. He could see Walt engaging with the Imagineers, engaging with the design of his park. He respected the way Walt could tell actual engineers, no, this will work. They'd say to him, there's no way this will happen. And Walt would envision it and describe to them what he wanted. Again, we've talked so much about how the original Disneyland wasn't planned.
No.
It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And he said he respected that Walt knew more about the contours of the land and how water would flow than any engineer could. But
Which I have a hard time believing. That I feel like that's one of those nice things people say after you die. You know what I mean? It's like they'll say about me, like, "Oh, he could really carry a conversation. He could really interview people really well." It's like, no, it's just a nice thing you say about someone.
I don't know. Milt wasn't exactly known for being a super nice guy.
That's true.
Yeah, but still, I don't know.
Anyway, but yeah, he
I
felt.
just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. I don't believe that Walt Disney knew more about engineering waterways than anybody else.
Right.
I don't buy it.
He did create a river that instantly drained because it was made out of clay.
See? There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, let's see about Walt. What he said about Walt at one point in an interview, he said the reason he could talk back to Walt was because, as he put it, I could do something that Walt was no good at. He was a lousy cartoonist.
All right.
And that is the problem, I suppose, with being honest about your shortcomings to your staff.
Yeah.
Is that anybody's better? Like, what are you going to do? Fire me?
Yeah.
There you
What are
go.
you going to do?
Right.
Yeah.
He said he was an absolutely wonderfully creative man, a wonderful story man, and a fountain of ideas. Some of his ideas were lousy, some were good. Most of them were good. As a story man, my God, he was the best in the world. But you had to be fairly honest. If you were a yes man, you could say yes one day to a stupid idea and get your ass in a sling the next day for saying so.
So basically it depended on his mood.
Right, exactly. But if you're always honest with him, Walt respected that. So yeah, that was the way he approached working with Walt. Let's see. So I'm going to run through a bunch of the characters that Milt designed and either designed or had a major or did the full animation in the feature for.
Actually, let's take a break.
Okay, let's do that.
Take a break real fast. Get you something to drink, and me something to drink, and we'll be right back here in Ears Up. Hang on, everybody. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Gee, sorry guys, but that guy bought 14 churros. I'm all sold out.
And now, back to the show.
All right, thanks for hanging on, everybody. Before we get back into Milt, I want to let everybody know that summer is right around the corner, and our friends at the 21st Amendment are celebrating the return of the warmer days with their popular and everyone's favorite seasonal beer, Hell or High Watermelon Wheat. The brewers at the 21st Amendment brew an American wheat beer with real watermelon juice, creating a refreshing, fruity, and quenching beer, or what they affectionately call summer in a can. Hell or High Watermelon Wheat will make any weekend barbecue or beach time activity that much better. When visiting the California Bay Area, be sure and stop in at the 21st Amendment's San Francisco Brew Pub at 563 2nd Street, just 2 blocks from where baseball is played. And also be sure and visit their brewery tap room just across the bay in San Leandro with an outdoor beer garden. Outdoor beer garden.
God, I love
Delightful.
that place.
Yeah, it's a good spot. It's a good spot.
And I love that beer.
There you go. Yeah, we looked for it the other day. We couldn't find it.
Yeah, I
Total
couldn't
Wine or
find it. I was a
whatever.
little bit sad.
Yeah, sold out probably.
We'll get it.
All right, Eric, you were going to go through characters that Milt developed or designed, right?
Yeah, exactly. As Floyd Norman once stated in an interview, if Milt didn't animate it, he at least designed it. For decades, he was the major influence on the studio. Milt, not necessarily in response to this quote, but sort of spiritually in response to it, claimed he often got the jobs nobody else wanted.
Sounds like it. But it also sounds like he took those jobs because he felt like he could do it better than everyone else.
Oh, sure. He's probably one of the guys who knew that he could do everything better than everybody else. He just didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe he wasn't having the most fun, but he got it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of his major roles outside of Pinocchio. Let's see, we've got Bambi and Thumper in Bambi. He did a Donald Duck sequence in Saludos Amigos. In Song of the South, Brer Rabbit, Brer Bear, and Brer Fox.
Wow.
He
Talk
did
about iconic for, a myriad reasons. I don't know why myriad is my new term of the day, but wow, he designed Brer Rabbit. Jeez, that's wild.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to steer too far, but I just learned something that
Mars might have an atmosphere.
Beatrix Potter wrote Peter Rabbit.
Peter Rabbit, yeah.
And there's like 23 stories surrounding Peter Rabbit. Apparently those actually were, I don't want to say stolen, but they were basically taken from Brer Rabbit stories.
Really? That's funny.
There's a
Good.
a lot of people don't talk about it, but
Yeah.
there are some older interviews with Beatrix Potter where he or she, actually, I guess she like talks about how she remembered hearing stories like from enslaved people, like the Brer Rabbit type stories, and but it's just funny because you don't really hear that, even though she sort of admitted it, but nobody talks about it, and you're like,
so she did whitewashed versions of
Yeah.
Uncle Remus stories and
yeah.
At least
Totally.
influenced by,
Influenced by,
Yeah.
and yeah, like that the article was not only saying that that's the case and that she sort of admitted it, but also that no one talks about it. It's like a non-thing, and it's like so weird. So anyway, sorry.
No, cool. I mean, the rest of this is a list, so feel free to interrupt and make comments on things. Let's see. In Melody Time, he did Slewfoot Sue, a character he liked drawing, and Johnny Appleseed, who he thought was boring.
Dude, that's
Well,
Johnny
is.
Appleseed is the worst part of that little ensemble or whatever. I hate it so much. It's so just beat me over the head with a Bible, for God's sakes. Like I don't know. It's terrible.
Oh yeah. Speaking of package films, this is a little less packagey, but he did Mole and McBadger in the Mr. Toad part and Brom in the Ichabod part of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
All right.
He created the fairy godmother, the king, and the grand duke in Cinderella.
Oh.
Wow.
The fairy godmother was mostly his design because Walt wanted a stately, like tall, like statuesque woman to be the fairy godmother, and he wanted to have a pudgy, like flora fauna Merryweather style fairy, and he kind of met in the middle. And he had to convince Walt by doing a bunch of different versions and eventually settled on the fairy godmother that we all know.
I think that what he had in mind was much better.
Yeah, like an austere or whatever
Yeah.
grandma, that wouldn't be cozy.
Well, yeah, because I'm imagining like essentially, what's her name? The wings and she flies around and she's kind of a bee. Not a bee, but a
The blue fairy, Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell, yeah, like that. I'm imagining
That
like
one.
Tinkerbell, but in a dress, being fairy godmother, and I'm like,
Hmm.
nah.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, he did a bunch of Alice scenes. He created the designs for Peter Pan, Wendy, and the rest of the Darling family.
Jeez.
Wow.
He was the lead animator for Tramp in Lady and the Tramp.
Okay. All right.
He, as I mentioned, he was Prince Philip, but he also got to do King Hubert in Sleeping Beauty.
All right.
He did, for 101 Dalmatians, he did Pongo, Perdita, Roger, and Anita, and lots of other dogs.
Yeah.
I bet.
For Sword in the Stone, he designed Arthur, Merlin, Ector, Kay, Bart, and Madame Mim, who is one of his favorite characters of all time.
Oh, yeah, she was great.
Well, and so I gotta say, like, it seems even more for his resume, I guess. It puts him even on a bigger pedestal that he didn't necessarily animate these characters, but he designed them. Like, it's almost more important to design these characters than it is to be the one to animate them, you know? Like, he's the one that made them what they are.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and I'll get into that in just a little bit here when I finish up my list. But yeah, that was it. Like, that really sets the tone for everything, right? Jungle Book. So he did Kaa, Mowgli, Bagheera, King Louie, and Shere Khan was a character that he animated fully.
Jeez.
It widely considered by lots of other Disney animators to be his crowning achievement. He designed Tigger. He did
Wow.
Tigger in Winnie the Pooh and The Blustery Day, and then the subsequent, the next two films that Tigger was in. He designed many of the characters in Aristocats, not only the cats, but the humans.
Everybody wants to be designed by Milt.
There you go. And I won't list all those because I don't know any of those character names. I don't know them. Watched that movie in a long time. Can't wait for the live action one.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Robin Hood, Little John, Maid Marian, Lady Cluck, and the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Wow.
And the last character he fully animated was Medusa from The Rescuers. One of his favorites, just like Madame Mim, an over-the-top villain character. He loved the design. He loved her interesting movements and her motivations. And he used 0 live-action guides to creating her. He just grew.
Incredible.
Cool.
Yeah.
Incredible talent.
Yeah,
I
some
get
of
excited when I throw the end of a strawberry in the garbage can from 12 feet away. You know what I mean? When I sink it, it's like, yes, that's what I'm doing today. That is the best thing I'm going to do today.
Sweet, yeah, you're
This goes over
still talking
animating.
about it.
Yeah.
So Ron Clements, one of the directors of The Little Mermaid, remembered working with him in the 1970s. He compares Milt to the Simon Cowell of animation.
Okay. Yep.
Sounds about right.
Sure, man.
Andreas Deha, the lead animator for Scar in The Lion King, developed a relationship with him as well in his later years. He remembers him mostly after Milt had retired because he kind of sought him out. He had met him during his final days at the studio. And he says that once Milt was out of the studio, he was less critical, he was less fiery, and he freely shared his work with Andreas, and he would give him pointers on his designs and on his technique. He really helped him improve, and Andreas has a ton. If you seek out Andreas Deha, that's Deja, I hope it's Deha.
Yeah.
Seek him out and seek his blog out. He's still putting out posts once or twice a month, and many of his posts are about Milt, and he has tons of sketches from Milt's archives.
Wow.
And
That's
is
cool.
potentially working on a book.
Nice.
Milt's philosophy of animation, he said in an interview once, realism isn't wooden. It's the people you have doing it. I didn't just follow live action that closely. Later on, I was fortunate to have my own way in these things and didn't use live action at all with Ector and Kay in Sword in the Stone. They're a lot better. On The Rescuers, I didn't use any live action on Medusa. I worked awfully hard and have studied how people move, and you don't have to use reference then. Observations of people movement, muscles, how muscles are involved, balance, weight. It's something you just learn. I could animate an animal from how it has to move.
Yeah, the he's more interested in the motivation for the movement rather than how it moves in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is funny
Interesting.
because you watch Sword in the Stone and all those characters sort of lumber.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's graceful. Maybe Merlin, but he's a little bow-legged, so he kind of just like
He's
hops
kind of
along.
bouncy and yeah.
Yeah, but like, you know, Ector stumbles, Sir Kay stumbles, you know, Wart just sort of bounds along like a little rubber ball. I don't know, the movement is very purposeful, I suppose. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was his style. People sometimes described his method as like shaky head because everybody's a little bit bouncy in some of those later features. Well, over time, Milt saw a change in the studio. He said about the early days, thank God we had Walt in those days. Nobody was really the director because Walt was the director. Because at that time, even though you were the director, you're mostly what you did was like develop storyboards, develop character design. You kind of cut people loose, but Walt would tell you if he liked it or if he didn't, because it's not like a movie is filmed or a TV show is filmed normally with live action, where you get hundreds of hours of film and then you cut out the parts you want. With animation, you don't have time for that. You have to be purposeful. Every second has to count.
Yeah.
And I've got things change in 1955 when Walt was distracted by the parks. He didn't think that Walt would have let some of these things go through. The old Walt would not have let some of these things happen in Sleeping Beauty, which is interesting. Sleeping Beauty was a flop when it first came out. Now we think it's a complete classic, but initially it was a flop.
See, it's like the Love Guru.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, after Walt died, the artists were no longer the lead directors of animation. Directors came in to tell people how to do things, and the animators were more workhorses. Over time, they kind of lost that godlike status that they once held, where they were. Floyd Norman was terrified of meeting one of his legends, Milt Kahl, in the flesh, and that's because they weren't running the entire show anymore. And then eventually, as we've talked about before, animation itself waned in status, and the studios weren't what they once were. And in 1976, he told Ron Miller he wasn't going to do it anymore. It wasn't fun anymore. And he left. Milt died 11 years later on April 19th, 1987 of pneumonia. He,
Jeez.
yeah, in his final years, he didn't draw, he didn't paint. He sometimes created wire models of ballet dancers. When interviewers would go to his house, like one interviewer, Robin Allen, remarked that while he was still as abrasive and arrogant as ever in 1985, he had no Disney stuff around. He had almost none of his art.
Wow.
What he kept were the funny caricatures that they would draw of each other. At that time, he was more into boats, vintage cars, and these little wire models of dancers that he thought were fun.
Wow.
He loved going to the movies, but not necessarily art.
Yeah. The Disney caricatures were probably the point for him.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was a job, but that was camaraderie.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Floyd Norman remembers when they really got into it, as he raised himself in Milt's esteem. They would shout, they would just yell at each other, insults across the hall, like, you couldn't draw your own ass. And they would just heckle each other all day long and laugh and have fun and work.
Yeah.
His eventual legacy, like I mentioned at the top here, he was referred to as the Michelangelo of Disney animation. He was the king of kings. He was Walt's genius. And in 1989, as part of the second class of Disney legends, he was one of the legends that was named. That particular class was entirely Walt's 9 old men plus the original Disney animator Iwerks.
Nice.
Those 10 were the second class, and of
That's
course
cool.
Milt was among them. So he's been a Disney legend for quite some time.
Attaboy.
And there you go. That's
Cool.
our old pal Milton.
Nicely done.
Awesome, Eric. Good job.
Thank you.
Nice work. Okay, we are running up against the time clock for running into the secret show, but we gotta talk news.
Back to the
Oh, no.
newsroom on In Depth.
Whoop, wrong bug. Sorry, wrong bed. Wrong. I'm a professional. Where is it? There it is.
March in the past, present, and future with all the news that's fit to cover. It's the EarzUp Disney News.
There is a lot to talk about, but I'm gonna do one of these. I'm gonna do one of these stories, and we'll talk about everything else on the Secret Show.
Okay. Sounds good.
You guys heard of the Galactic Star Cruiser, the Star
I'm
Wars
aware.
Hotel?
Yeah.
Well, apparently, the time has come for the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser, and it will close its doors for good in September of this year.
Oh boy.
What?
It is done. That is over. Shocking to probably nobody at all. I mean,
closed.
except like
Yeah.
the executives at Disney, because once this was announced, it got nothing but ridicule online for the pricing, and then as the pricing was rolled out and became more expensive, and all the stuff that you were supposed to get but you didn't really get, and how weird it was, and like everybody, especially us, we were all going, this is not sustainable. Because it's a 1 or maybe 2 time thing. This is not a 5-time repeater. You don't do this there's no way.
You can't afford to redo it.
You can't afford it.
I am surprised that it's shutting down so quickly.
Me too.
For one.
Yes.
I'm also surprised that they're letting. How do I say this? Like I thought their egos were too big to close it down.
Yeah, I thought maybe for sure we would get some sort of like, reduction in price, reduction of what the thing is, maybe not a 2-night thing, but make it a normal immersive hotel or do something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're probably not going to demolish it, but they'll
No.
just make it something else. But there's only 100 rooms in this place.
Right. Like, what will it be?
I don't know.
Maybe it's going to be part of the Walt. What is that? The Walt Disney World or Walt Disney Vacation Club? Maybe it could be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, probably. But it's weird that they're going to kill the whole thing. So all those people who got hired for this, that's it. They're not going to have jobs there.
Yeah.
And it's very much an admitted failure. You're admitting failure.
Right. And that's not something they normally do, which is
No.
why I thought, like, that announcement when you told me, jaw just dropped.
Me too. When I saw it, I think it was on Discord. Someone dropped it on Discord. It's like, what? I'm not surprised, but I'm sort of surprised that it happened.
It was so shocking that Terrence texted us.
Yeah, I know.
He's like, guess what? There's big news. And it's like, yeah, no kidding,
And
dude.
Bev.
And Bev.
And Bev.
Separately.
Yeah.
Very late last night.
Yeah. And it was weird because, it was one of those things when, like I said, when it opened, we were sitting here going, you'll go once, maybe twice. That's it. There's no repeatability for this. That's the flaw. But
Well, that, and I don't even think they got people to go the once and twice because it's just too expensive. It's
Yeah.
asking too much of your patron.
Disney World is shutting down the Galactic Star Cruiser, the immersive Star Wars themed hotel that cost around $5,000 for a 2-night stay. In an update on Disney's website, the company says the Star Cruiser will host its final guests from September 28th to the 30th. Quote, we are so proud of all the cast members and Imagineers who brought Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser to life and look forward to delivering an excellent experience for guests during the remaining voyages over the coming months. Disney's update says, thank you to our guests and fans for making this experience so special. It's not an experience. It shouldn't have been, you don't call it an experience. With their announcement sort of reads like it was always going to be temporary, guys. we tried this thing and it's come to an end and we learned a lot to do the next thing. It's like,
Well,
good spin. I mean,
they have to spin.
it's a very good spin. Disney's Galactic Star Cruiser hasn't been around for long, as it only first opened its doors to guests in March of 2022, so just over a year. The lavish hotel is modeled after the Halcyon in Star Wars, featuring highly detailed decor, interactive events, themed dining, and live entertainment. But with a price of roughly $4,800 for 2 adults, or $5,999 for 3 adults and 1 kid, because who doesn't travel with 3 adults and 1 kid? Like, what?
Yeah.
Disney doesn't exactly make taking the stay very affordable. In March, Disney announced that it would start scheduling 2 bookings per week in October, down from
What?
its typical 3 to 4 week booking.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
does that mean? I'm a little confused by that.
that it wouldn't just be all they were limiting the amount of days that you could actually book this hotel in
Oh.
October, and then I guess they decided just to pull the plug
I
entirely.
see. Got it.
Yeah. According to Disney, the company will contact anyone who has bookings on or after September 30th to, quote, discuss your options and modify your plans. I like how we'll contact anyone who has bookings. Either you do or you don't. Like, either you know that people have bookings or they don't. I bet
Yeah, I
nobody
know.
has bookings. Yeah.
I like
and
the
al-
options.
Yeah. Yeah. What options?
Yeah, right.
Give me my money back.
Yeah.
Like, also, like, I'm really like, if you're like on those last couple of days in September, I feel like it's not going to be a good experience. You're not going to get the full excitement from the cast.
I disagree. I think
Oh,
it'll be
no.
better because
Really?
because I think the atmosphere there will be of we are the last people to ever do this, and
Right.
it'll be more like a party, and I bet they're going to do something special. That's the way I think about it too. It's like decommissioning a cruise liner or whatever. I
Yeah,
don't
the
know.
last night of any show is always everybody's having a blast. The cast know what they're doing. And what's interesting, for the last few months, they've been announcing all these different ways where they're going to discount stays by 30%. So
Yeah.
annual pass holders get 30% off. Disney Visa card holders get 30% off. DVC members get 30% off. Right after they announced that, all those deals were gone.
Yeah.
So September's back up to full price.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The company is also pausing new bookings until May 26th while it takes care of affected guests.
There you go.
All right, cool, man.
All 2 of them.
Yeah. So there's that. We got time for just briefly one more, which is the other huge story. Remember how we talked about Disney moving Imagineering to Florida?
Mm-hmm.
To Lake
Uh,
Nona.
to
Beautiful
Lake
Lake
Nona.
Nona.
Yeah, now it's like no one gonna live here because Disney has pulled the plug on that project, canceling the move, and telling all the affected Imagineers you can stay in Glendale. You
Wow.
do not have to go to Florida. It's a total reversal of what's been talked about for a year, 2 years now, and it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and it's also weird that it came the same week that reports came out that DeSantis is starting to maybe announce his presidency run next week.
Weird.
Yeah, I feel like the timing is a little odd, and we'll read some stories on the Secret Show about people predicting what this loss in revenue and this loss in like business impact will mean for Florida.
Yeah.
It's a huge, it's a big slap in the face.
It's a slap in the face, but it's not something they had. So it's not like they're taking something away. They're taking away what they said they were going to do for the most part. But I also think that why would the way that DeSantis has been acting with Disney?
Yeah.
Why would they stay? Why would they continue to do business in Florida
Right.
if they don't have to? Like it makes perfect sense for them to be like, bye.
Yeah, we don't need to do this anymore. The only bummer about it is the Imagineers who, number one, had to go through hell deciding whether or not, because Disney came to everybody and was like, look, you have until this date to figure out if you want to move to Florida and we'll pay for that and whatever, or you find another job. You have to quit. Like, that's it. And, we knew some people who were caught up in that mess, and it was very stressful for these people. And there were a few people who have moved to Florida, uprooted their lives out here, moved to Florida, bought a house, created a life. And then now Disney says, we're not going to make everybody else do that. So what they are saying is we'll pay to relocate you back.
That's good.
That is good. But imagine you live in, LA, Glendale, Upland, whatever, right? Like that whole like upper LA area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pasadena, whatever, right? And you sell your house, your $1 million.
You're not getting that back.
You're not getting, no, then you move to Florida and you know what I mean?
That's why you can't ever leave California, because you can't ever come back.
Especially in the Southern California housing market, it would be a bear to re-enter.
Yeah.
So where does that come in? Like the loss of money just by swapping real estate markets.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I feel terrible for not on the one hand, I feel terrible for the Imagineers because they had to go through this, but also they didn't have to. I still don't really understand this whole like move, but it's over now. And we can discuss a little bit more of the Secret Show. But we got to take off. We got to go make drinks and then come back on in 9 minutes for the Secret Show. Yeah, so if you are a Patreon supporter, and, honestly, I say this all the time, but why wouldn't you be? The link is already in Patreon, so go over there, spin that up, and we'll be over in just a second. I'll play some music until we get back in and start the show and do a whole bunch of other Disney news, because there's a lot to talk about. A lot of cool stuff, too, but just that. Anyway, Eric, good job, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you did
Very well
a
done.
wonderful job. Just so you guys know what's coming up on the docket here for the next couple months, I believe the next show is going to be April 1st. It's not a trick.
April 1st?
April Fool. June 1st.
April's past.
Yeah, it's not a trick. June 1st, Terrence will be back on the show to tell us about his journey through Disney cruises. He went on a
Wow.
Disney cruise in April. That's where the April date came from. And he's going to come on and give us a rundown of how that was for him and his family and what they did and if you'd recommend it and all that kind of fun stuff.
Cool.
So we'll be doing that. We're going to get RGH on here in a couple of months or maybe a month or whatever to talk about Genie Plus because he's used it on both coasts now.
Oh.
And he's like, I got some tips.
He's a pro.
Yeah, he's a pro. So we got some cool shows coming up for you.
Sweet.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody. And until next time, we'll see you in the parks.